You know, we all have these smart speakers in our homes, and we trust them to listen for our voices. But what if they could be controlled by something they can't even hear? Today, we're diving into a vulnerability that is so clever, it feels like it's straight out of a spy movie, controlling your smart devices with nothing but a beam of light. I mean, really think about that for a second. Imagine someone hundreds of feet away silently telling your smart speaker to unlock your front door. No sound, no forced entry, just a tiny, focused beam of light. It sounds completely impossible, right? Well, it's not. It's very, very real. Researchers have developed an attack they call light commands, and it basically exploits a fundamental weakness in the hardware that lets our devices hear us in the first place. And this isn't just some theory, they've actually done it. So just how far can this laser voice actually go? This is where things get truly mind-boggling. You know, previous attacks that tried to do something similar with sound were limited to maybe 25 feet. Light commands just completely shatters that record. So, who figured this out? It was a team from the University of Michigan and Japan's University of Electrocommunications. They decided to see just how far they could push this vulnerability, and they set up some really clever experiments to find its absolute limit. And this is the number that just stunned everyone: 110 meters. To give you some perspective, that's longer than an entire football field. From that incredible distance, through open air, these researchers could successfully give commands to a smart speaker using nothing but a laser. So how'd they pull it off? It's actually pretty simple, in a genius kind of way. They took a laser, attached a telephoto lens to keep the beam tight over a long distance, and just aimed it down this huge hallway. The light itself was modulated. You can just think of it as flickering in a very precise way that mimics a sound wave. And when that flickering light hit the tiny microphone hole on a Google Home, the device heard a command and just did it. And they proved this wasn't just some lab trick that only works in perfect conditions. In what has to be the most stunning demo, they sent commands from a bell tower about 75 meters away, targeting a device in an office building 4 floors up. And it worked, right through a closed double-pane glass window. Incredible. Okay, so this brings up the most important question, right? How on earth does this work? How can light, which is silent, trick a microphone into hearing a voice? We've got to get into the physics here. This really is the heart of the whole vulnerability. A microphone is designed to do one thing and one thing only: convert the physical vibrations of sound into an electrical signal. It should be completely deaf to light. So what's the trick here? Well, the secret lies in the hardware itself. The answer is something called a MEMS microphone. MEMS stands for Micro Electromechanical System, and it's the tiny mic you'll find in basically all of our modern gadgets. It's its microscopic diaphragm on a chip that physically moves when sound waves hit. Well, it turns out that light can mess with this tiny system in 2 different ways. First, there's the photoelectric effect. If the laser hits the microphone's internal circuits, it can generate a false electrical signal. But even cooler is the photoacoustic effect. The light can actually heat up that tiny diaphragm, causing it to vibrate just as if a real sound wave had hit it. The laser is essentially tapping on the sensor with light. The researchers really summed it up perfectly here. There's a semantic gap. That's a fancy way of saying there's a huge difference between what we think a microphone does, just listen to sound, and what its physics actually allow it to do, which includes responding to light. Attackers are just exploiting this hidden, unintended feature. All right, so we know the attack works, and we know the cool physics behind it. But what does this actually mean for us in the real world? This is where a theoretical hack becomes a very real threat to our security. It's a fascinating science experiment, sure, but let's talk about the real stakes. If an attacker had this laser setup aimed at your home, what could they actually get your smart devices to do? The possibilities are, well, they're pretty alarming. See, an attacker can do pretty much anything you can do with your voice. They'd probably start by silently telling the device to set its volume to 0 so you don't hear anything. Then they could issue commands to unlock your smart front door, open your garage, or even start making purchases on your Amazon account. And yeah, if your car is connected to your smart assistant, they proved they could locate, unlock, and even start some vehicles. And this isn't a problem with just one product. The researchers tested a whole bunch of devices, and they all had different levels of sensitivity. The original Google Home, for instance, is incredibly vulnerable. It only takes half a milliwatt of laser power to control it. To put that in perspective, a standard, legal 5 milliwatt laser pointer is 10 times more powerful than that. Other devices, like our phones, need more power, but they're definitely still susceptible. Now, you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, my smart lock needs a PIN. And that's a good security measure, in theory. But when the researchers tested an August Smart Lock Pro, they found a major loophole in how it handles those pins through a smart assistant. The flaw they found was simple, but absolutely critical. The system didn't lock an attacker out after too many wrong guesses. So they just wrote a program that used the laser to inject every single possible pin, one after the other. For a normal 4-digit pin, they calculated it would take about 36 hours to brute force the code and unlock the door, all done remotely and in total silence. Okay, so that's all pretty scary. But the good news is, now that this vulnerability is out in the open, we can actually start thinking about how to defend against it. This is not an unfixable problem. So how do we stop an attack like this? Thankfully, the researchers didn't just point out the problem. They also proposed several really clever solutions, looking at this from both a software and a hardware angle. On the software side, it's pretty smart. Most of these devices have multiple microphones, so you can program them to get suspicious if only one of those mics hears a command. I mean, a real human voice should be picked up by all of them, right? And on the hardware side, the fix is even more direct. Just physically block the light. Redesign the device so there's no straight line from the outside port to the microphone sensor. So some of the best defenses are adding extra layers of security. Things like asking a random question before executing a sensitive command like unlock the door. But really, the most robust long-term solutions are probably physical. Redesigning the hardware to create a kind of maze for the sound to travel through. One that a straight beam of light just can't navigate. And all of this leaves us with one last really important question. This whole light commands thing revealed a gap in microphones, a difference between what they're supposed to do and what they can actually be tricked into doing. So it makes you wonder, what other sensors are all around us, in our phones, our cars, our medical devices? What other hidden vulnerabilities, what other semantic gaps are just sitting there waiting to be discovered? And that's really the big takeaway here.